Welcome to the Disability News Report. I'm your host, Jennifer Price, and this is the Special Education Edition, where I am answering your questions, either common questions I've received as a special education attorney or questions that I've received directly from you in my inbox. So the question I'm answering this week is, does a child with a visual impairment receive specialized instruction? This is such a great question. I am very glad that it was asked. The lawyer answer, unfortunately, that I do have to give is it depends. Okay, so it really depends on whether your child will receive or is entitled to receive an IEP or, a specialized education is really going to depend on the visual impairment evaluation. Okay, so at the end of the day, if your child has a visual impairment and you believe that visual impairment is impeding upon your child being able to access educational curriculum, then you need to have an evaluation done. Now, that evaluation must be focused on not just whether your child has a visual impairment, but it needs to be focused on whether that visual impairment is preventing your child from accessing education. That is really the key here, because at the end of the day, everything concerning an IEP and receiving a specially designed instruction is centered around whether your child is able to access the educational benefits in spite of having the disability. So just because your child has a disability, such as a visual or a vision impairment, does not automatically translate into receiving an IEP. The second step needs to also be whether your child is having a hard time accessing the education. And if you want to know more about, all of the ins and outs in terms of evaluations, I do talk about that in my video about evaluations, which is all about accessing education. So if you have a child with a vision impairment, and you want them to have, you believe that it's affecting their ability to access education, not only do you need to get an evaluation, but I wouldn't just go to a doctor, because the doctor is going to provide an evaluation, but at the end of the evaluation or somewhere in the evaluation, there's going to be some sort of remark or notation indicating that any accommodation that your child receives is of medical necessity. Okay, that is not what's required in order to get an IEP. If you want your child to get an IEP because you strongly believe that it is affecting their ability to access education, then any sort of evaluation needs to have as a conclusion that whatever accommodations or recommendations that are being offered by this doctor are required as an educational necessity. Okay, I do kind of use air quotes a little bit too much. I don't know if it was necessary, but the point is that this all goes back to accessing education. That's the fundamental root of this. So an evaluation by just a regular ophthalmologist, for example, I can almost promise you, if you really read the evaluation, will probably say somewhere in there medical necessity. The accommodations are necessary because they are a medical necessity. That's not what is important when it comes to getting an IEP. It needs to come down to an educational necessity. And usually because of that, those evaluations are generally done by some sort of outside agency, unless you're in a school district where they have a certified person to conduct a vision evaluation. They probably have contracted with an outside agency to conduct the evaluation, because the evaluation is going to be done in the school, because the person who is evaluating your child needs to see how your child is performing in the school, behaving in the school, accessing his education in the school environment, to then be able to render a conclusion as to whether he has a vision impairment and that vision impairment is affecting his ability to access his educational curriculum. So that is the reason why the direct answer to the question of Can my child with a vision impairment receive specialized instruction? It depends. Because yes, in theory, he can, but you've also got to prove that the vision impairment is not just that your child has a vision impairment, but that it's affecting his ability to access education. And I do want to stress to parents, simply because your child has a vision impairment does not mean that he can't access the education. I would not, and I would not be quick to make the leap or jump that because you got a doctor to say he needs these accommodations or whatnot as a medical necessity, that will easily translate into a vision educational evaluation rendering the same conclusion. It is possible that your child might have a vision impairment and any accommodations might be medically necessary. However, they are not deemed to be educationally necessary, or I don't even know if that's the word, and necessary from an educational standpoint. And that could be for any number of reasons, like they feel like the school feels like, maybe a different seating position is necessary. You don't necessarily need to have a full IEP. That's it for this week. I will see you next week. If you like the video, do a thumbs up, comment with a question, and definitely share, and I will see you next week.